Hi, hello everyone. Good evening all. Welcome back to Unacademy UPSC Articulate YouTube channel. So this is Nisha Najumuddin, your expert guide, mentor and top economics and current affairs faculty at Unacademy. So today in this particular video, we are here to talk about the fundamentals or basics of economy in just 30 minutes. The most important concepts pertaining to the economy, guys, will be discussed in a crystal clear manner, and then what we'll do is we'll have a proper interlinkaging of the same with the trending current affairs, followed by the previous year question answer discussion. And also, if supposing the concept what we are discussing, if it is not having a previous year question, then we'll be doing a similar mock questions for practice. So this is a complete course to make sure that your preparation is in the right path. So as you all know, guys, apart from this, I also do handle a lot of other courses in Unacademy, both the Plus platform and also the free platform. Okay. So this is a schedule of my free classes. Every day 7 to 7:30 you will have this YouTube class, no doubt in that. And similarly 6 to 7 p.m. on a daily basis, you will have an Unacademy free special live class titled Top 1000 MCQ Series to Crack Your UPSC Prelims 2021. It is a hit course and make sure that you enroll for it. Very simple. In the description box, you can follow me via the Unacademy profile. There, my free class will be available. You can click on the link and apply the code nisha.nujumuddin to avail the free classes in PDF. Similarly, I do handle few batch courses as well in Unacademy. So 2 p.m. is the timing for my NCERT Economy batch course. After that, from June 15th onwards, another Prelim Sampurna 1200 MCQs in current affairs will begin once again, the part 2 of it. So this is my schedule, guys, for the month of June. So without fail, you can just make a note of it. And to be a part of the Plus platform, very simple. Use code Nisha IAS Live. Okay? Not only just for your discounts, also for the personal mentoring program to be a part of all these batches. And this is my free class details. Every day 6 p.m. you can just go through. So here we go. It's very, very important for us to quickly have a look into what we are going to discuss today, right? Yes. So now, today if you see the topic of discussions, what we are going to do talks about the topic governance and also public-private partnership investment model. I have chosen two simple topics which will be discussed in less than 30 minutes. So learning the most important concepts pertaining to the current affairs also in a quick, short and simple manner. So here we go. The very first topic of discussion is about governance. So you will think that why this particular topic is chosen. The reason is because there is something called as Good Governance Index. Okay, Good Governance Index. So in that particular perspective, it is important for you to know regarding the topic governance in detail. So now, are you all ready to study these topics? So yes, here we go to study economics through everyday stories around the world. And now if you see, as far as topic 6 governance is concerned, what is governance basically? Before going to any other topic like let's say index or anything pertaining to this, you should know in simple terms what is the meaning of governance. You may everybody know, right? A governance is something which has a process of decision making. The same thing. It is nothing but a process of proper decision making, and it is also a process by which these decisions they have been implemented. Sometimes they may be implemented or they may not be implemented. So governance is basically used in several contexts. Let's say for example, when you hear the term governance, you will think in the context of government. Government is doing a proper governance for the welfare of the people. So not only in government, even if you see in various other contexts like your corporate, corporate scenario, you have something called as corporate governance, then international governance, national governance, local governance, सब कुछ like that. So in various contexts, you can actually use the term called as governance to take proper decision making with regard to the policies, programs, protocols, सब कुछ like that. This is called as governance in simple terms, right? Now, there is something called as good and bad governance. Again, when things are proper, we say it's a good governance. But still, let's have a quick look into what is good governance in the context of economy. It is basically an approach which is done by the government. So an approach to government which is committed for what? Creating a so-called system where you can ensure fair and justice and peace. So automatically every single citizen or individuals of our country, their rights have been protected. And they do have a lot of civil liberties or freedom. That's called as good governance. The governance or the instructions put forward by the government is in such a way that the rights of the human beings of our country is being protected. At the same time, the freedom or the liberty, in the context of civil liberty, they are being protected. There is no threat to that as a whole. So that is called as good governance, right? Now, since we understood what is governance and good governance, it is very, very important for us to have an understanding as to what is the good government index. I repeat, Good Government Index. So this comes under the current affairs perspective of governance. So the reason why I taught you this topic is there was a news based on the Good Governance Index, guys, where our country India was ranking 49th. So in order to teach you that particular perspective, I taught you what is governance and also good governance, which all of you know. So here we go. If you see recently a country India, we have been ranking 49 in what? In the Chandler Good Government Index. That is how far we are able to perform our activities or duties properly. Take care. And now if you see globally, which country ranked number 1? Again, the Scandinavian country, Finland. Finland has again topped the list. And Finland is quite common, not only for governance. If you see, owing to the less population they have and a very peaceful atmosphere they have, even for your Human Development Index, which takes into consideration your education, health and income parameters, Finland had a very good place as well. That is, always Norway ranks number 1, but if you see in the top 10 positions, Finland always try to occupy that position as such. So Finland is one of the few good countries which maintain all these parameters in a right manner. So with regard to the Good Government Index, if you see, chalo, Finland international perspective, they top the list. Whereas what is the rank for our country India? We ranked 49. Clear? Now, who releases this index, guys? The Good Government Index, called as Chandler Good Government Index, take as CGI, that is released by an institute called as Chandler Institute of Governance. And now they are not a government organizations, rather a private non-profit organizations, and they do have the headquarters put up in Singapore. So what do this particular institute do is, as per the governance is concerned, take care. The Good Government Index or governance is concerned, they'll start classifying the country into what? Into various parameters. So let's say this index classifies more than 104 countries in terms of government capabilities and outcome. What is the capability of a government to take forward that particular country, and what is the outcome they are able to achieve accordingly as per the plans or programs they put forward. Now each country, what they do is, including a country India, they'll measure a country over 50 open data points, and if we are able to satisfy each of the indicators or parameters, then we are in the top list. Clear? That's how they normally measure. Now, though there are so many parameters also, this index called as Good Government or Governance Index, they focus on solid 7 pillars with regard to leadership and foresight. How effectively the leaders of our country is able to do the governance, and what about the predictions of foresight regarding the economy projections or growth or whatever it is. Then the robust laws and policies, the strong institutions that we have, the financial stewardship, attractive marketplace, global influence and reputation, and also helping people rise. So these are the 7 indexes, or let's say the pillars. Sorry, not indexes, the pillars based on which this particular index has been built up. Clear? Now, talking about the Chandler's Good Government Index, there is something called as Good Governance Index exclusively for our country India as such. So now the Chandler's Government Index is different from your Good Governance Index, whereas that has been launched, or let's say put forward, by a private NGO. Whereas Good Governance Index is initiated by whom, guys? It is initiated and also launched by the Ministry of Personal, Public Grievance and Pensions. Why? So that through this particular index, you will be able to determine what is the status of governance in our country. Are we in the right path or are we in the wrong path, like that? So basically through this, they'll be able to even access the impact, positive as well as negative, regarding the various interventions taken up by the central, state as well as UTs. Clear? The central government of course does this. So basically to have a good understanding of the state governments and UTs ka interventions, what are the activities taken by them to implement good governance as such. Clear? So people will think that the keyword governance, they has something related to polity as such. See, it is a topic coming under polity and also economy in the context of indexes. So we are taking only the economy part of it where the index is coming. Clear? But let me tell you this particular topic, if you see the history of this, the concept of governance, which I told you initially, not governance, good governance, take care. It is not a new concept. It was there over the ancient time as well. In fact, I can tell you, as far as the country India is concerned, the so-called concept, that is good governance, was talked even in the Arthashastra, guys, which is authored by Chanakya. He mentioned the characteristics of a good king, which talks about the so-called governance in that. Clear? If you see even a father of nation, Mahatma Gandhiji, he also gives a term called as Suraj. S-U-Raj, Suraj, literally meaning good governance. So previously also you can see before independence and also during that time, we have come across a term called as good governance. See, governance is always there, but good governance is something which is there since so many years. And today, if you see, as far as the recent current affairs is concerned, this particular term is getting more popularity. Clear? And the key actor in the so-called governance is none other than the government. Though you have other players like your private and stakeholders also, government is the key actor, or let's say the player, in order to make sure that the governance is going in the right strategy. Clear? And even the World Bank, if you see, they have given a lot of definitions in the context of governance, I can tell you that. And there was a document released by World Bank, okay, in the year, one second, there was a document released by World Bank, let me just write it, in the year 1992. And that document was called as Governance and Development, which exclusively focused on good governance. They said that for an economy, for an economy to really progress, good governance is very, very important. They are an essential complement to a sound economic policies, and they are very much central in creating what? Creating and sustaining a good environment which fosters strong and equitable development. We don't need development. Rather, we need what? Sustainable, strong and equitable development. Where there is equality for everybody, where there is inclusiveness for everybody, right? That is what the so-called concept good governance is all about. So, keeping all these things in mind only, the Ministry of Personnel, Public Grievance and Pensions, they literally launched an index called as Good Governance Index for our country, India. Clear? Not only World Bank, even your UNDP, United Nations Development Program, which released your Human Development Index, they also spoke about good governance. So there are so many, definitions and talks regarding the so-called concept good governance. Clear? Okay. I hope it is clear why we are studying good governance, because that's the importance of that. That's enough, guys. In short, sweet and simple manner, we have done with good governance topic. Now, the important questions to be noted from this area is the effectiveness of government system at various levels and people's participation in the governance system are interdependent. Discuss their relationship in the context of India. So you can actually write these answers and submit in my Telegram group as well, Nisha Najumuddin at Unacademy for UPSC, where I will evaluate it. Okay. So here we know that we have the state, district level, state level and central level government, right? So now at various level of government and also the participation of people called as community participation, a kind of decentralized perspective, how far it has been affecting the governance system. How are they interdependent? Based on that particular context, you have to analyze exclusively from the perspective of a country, India. And now, the second question talks about good governance index. Comment on that. So it's just not an index. It has so many things. The reason why I told you the history of good governance is because supposing a question for the mains come, then you can start from the Arthashastra's time, where a good governance concept was mentioned by Chanakya, then Mahatma Gandhi, then World Bank, then your UNDP, sab kuch like that. So this will make your answer more strong. And finally, talking about why this index called as Good Governance Index was put forward by the Ministry of Personnel and Grievances. Clear? Okay. And even if you see this good governance now, they have 8 major characteristics. You can even mention those things before talking about the good governance index of our country, India. Even if you see in the economic survey, guys, the previous year economic survey, trust was considered as an economic or let's say public good. Because people have lost the confidence in the governance due to so many mishappenings of the country for over the years. So now regaining trust of people in the governance of our country was very important. That is why in the year 2020, okay, 2019-20, in the economic survey, you can see that trust was actually what actually was defined as a public good. And in fact, that was gaining a lot of importance as such. So you can start connecting all these related points as well. Now, talking about the next topic, guys, we have a topic called as public-private investment model. So before going to that, there is one more prelims question. Let's quickly have a look into it. So I hope all of you will give me the right answer. Quickly answer it. Okay. First one tells it is released by Niti Aayog, your good governance index. Second tells they rank the states in the sectors like human resource development, economic governance, environment and citizen-centric governance. Third, Tamil Nadu has topped the good governance index. It's a very simple question. Look at the keyword Tamil Nadu. Do you think it's Tamil Nadu or it is Kerala? It could be Kerala, it could be Tamil Nadu, it could be Maharashtra. Quick. Definitely the answer can't be 1, 2, 3 because the options do not have them. So applying the method I've taught you in the free special live class of Unacademy. Keyword elimination comparison. The keyword is correct. The next keyword is good governance index. Apply the comparison technique. Do you think Niti Aayog has done it? Your independent think tank of Government of India? Definitely no, right? That is why the answer has become what? The answer has become what? D. What is the answer, guys? Only the second and third one. So now the moment you eliminate the first one, option number B and C is eliminated. Out of A and D, make a choice. Now you got to know that second one is 101% correct because both the options are having it. Now third one, yes, if you see the southern state, not Kerala but rather Tamil Nadu, they top the so-called good governance index. And now there is a categorization called as big states, small states and all. So out of the big states in your country, chalo, Tamil Nadu has topped the index called as good governance index. Okay? And this particular state was ranked among the top 5 in 6 parameters. Out of 6 parameters, they were able to satisfy all the 5 parameters, including a proper public infrastructure, the proper judicial perspective, public security, public health, among the others. Though they lagged behind the competitors in the ranking of commerce industry, in other basic public delivery system, they were quite good. That is why they ranked the index. Clear? And who releases this index? As we saw a couple of minutes ago, not Niti Aayog, rather your ministry, Union Ministry of Personal Public Grievance and Pensions. Now, if you see this particular index now for calculating, let's say for understanding the good governance perspective, they take 10 sectors into consideration. Of course, they take into consideration agriculture, how far people are doing well in agriculture, what is the government, governance in this particular perspective. Then your commerce, industries, human resource development, public health, infrastructure, economic governance, public security, sab kuch like that. Clear? So thus, Tamil Nadu was ranking number 1, followed by what? The northern state, that is Maharashtra, was ranked number 2. Then you had again Karnataka, then Chhattisgarh and Andhra. That is in the context of big states, 18 big states. Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Chhattisgarh and Andhra. They were in the top 5 positions. Okay. So we are done with the topic governance. So here we are with the topic number 7, which talks about public-private partnership. Now, public-private partnership is a very common topic these days. Sab kuch, everywhere you can see the government encouraging the private sector. Even in this COVID-19 pandemic also, when Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, what is that? The 20 lakh crore economic stimulus package to make our country India self-reliant or self-independent. That was launched by the government in the first 5 measures or tranches. They said, let us encourage more and more private sector. Not only today, even if you see during your 1990 time, that is in the year 1991, you had the new economic policy, right? What is the new economic policy? Your liberalization, privatization and globalization. Remember, I have taught you this in the previous classes. So now during that time also privatization was one such concept that was embraced. See, this doesn't mean that you are giving the entire thing to the private sector. Rather, private sector is different, privatization is different. Private sector means the entire ownership, control, sab kuch is in the hand of government. Sorry, the private sector, not government, private sector. But rather privatization means what? It's something like, let's say for example, a government organization or let's say industry is being given to the hands of private. Okay. Now in this particular context, 51% of share of the particular factory or let's say organization will remain with the government. 49 only they'll give it to the private. Okay. So now that is called as privatization. You are involving the private to get the job done because private people does the job at a faster pace because of good skilled laborers. Most importantly, funding. That is very important. They do have that. So that is the reason they want to involve them as such. Clear? So now in this particular session, we are exclusively pertaining our discussion towards the triple P investment model. You can call it as public-private partnership or your triple P investment model. Okay? So now when you have a collaboration between the government agency, the public and the private sector coming together, that is called as public-private partnership or triple P. Now this can be used to for your finance, then build and operate projects like let's say your public transportation network, your roads, railways, airways, then parks and also convention centers. If you see in our country India these days, almost every important sector is in the context of triple P model, right? Already your airways, this aviation sector has been in the context of triple P, public-private partnership, and that had a huge success. So now the government is moving on to the railways. Not now, in fact, previously they have done. Now they are aggressively talking about involving the triple P model in the railway sector as a whole to fetch them better income and also to get the work done at a faster pace. So many things like this are there. And now healthcare. Healthcare is also one such area where this public-private partnership is on the rise these days. So these are the important topics to be kept in mind while you study this. I hope the definition or the meaning of public-private partnership is crystal clear for you people. Now, when you have a public-private partnership, chalo, financing a project through such kind of model, what do you think, guys? Is it logical to do that? Absolutely, because this will allow a project to be completed very soon on the targeted time period itself. Or let's say even at the very first place you will get the project done. So that is why the government prefers this, right? It's indeed a good thing. We can't say it is a bad thing. So it is a good thing. Don't you all think so? Yes, put across your points in the chat box. Yes, all of you? Perfect. So now, talking about the public-private partnership, there are a few advantages and also disadvantages. See, everything has, the lighter and the darker side. So let's quickly have a look into the pros and cons of it. If you see the benefits, better infrastructure solutions. That is true. Because you will be able to bring in a better infrastructure, the projects will be completed at a faster rate, and there will be no delays in the infrastructure projects. And if you see, the risks are fully appraised early on to determine the feasibility of the project. Whereas, what are the disadvantages? It's public-private partnership where the government has to bear the cost also. So this can actually increase the cost of government. That is one such disadvantage. And now, the second disadvantage is the competitiveness. That will be limited. They will limit the competitiveness required for what? The cost-effective partnering. And also the third thing is the profits of the projects. They can vary depending on the assumed risk that they have, or it can differ based on the level of competition and the scope of the project. Clear? Now, sometimes, this so-called public-private partnership, if supposing they expertise a project in the partnership, they lie too much or heavily on the side of the private people, then the government will be at a disadvantage. So these are the few important points to be noted for you to have a complete concept clarity regarding what is Triple P. I hope it is crystal clear. Now, when you talk about the Triple P, here we are talking in the context of investment model. Which are the two different types of investment model? You have something called as public investment model and also what? And also private investment model. Then only you had the so-called combination of public and private together called as Triple P model. What is public? Here, the government requires revenue for investment. And now, whatever revenue or income the government need, the only way for them is what? Taxation. The public revenue. That with that particular income only they'll start spending it for the various infrastructure or other development perspective called as public expenditure. If it is not sufficient means, then they'll resort to borrowing. That is a time when something called as what? Fiscal deficit happens. The gap between public revenue and public expenditure, right? So all these things we have already discussed, but still we'll be discussing these concepts in the coming class in detail. Take care. Now, we know that since the world is facing the prospect of an extended period of weak economic growth, that is true, because of the so-called crisis and all this stuff, we need to enhance or increase the public sector investment to a greater number, right? Only then the productivity can be channelized in the right manner. But do you think the public is having, so much of fund or money with them? Hadn't they had so much of money, do you think they'll resort to borrowing? Definitely no. So that is one reason why we are depending on the private sectors through your Triple P model. Take care. So now, this public investment, many a times the government alone will not be able to fix a large demand shortfall overnight. So automatically we will not be able to achieve the growth as such, or let's say the targets on the fixed time. So now when you are actually depending on the government solely for the investment perspective, or let's say development perspective, it is called as public investment model in simple terms. What about private? The opposite. That is for a country to grow and increase. Its production investment is very important. Currently if you see for a country, India, tax, the tax revenue that they get, the government utilizes that. But in reality, we know that the revenue that the government gets from taxation is not at all sufficient or adequate for what? For meeting the demand of the country as a whole with regard to developmental activities or projects. So it is high time that the government is attracting or inviting private investment. So this private investment, it is not necessary that it should be only from the international market or from other countries. It can even be you can even source them from the domestic perspective also, within the country also, either within the country, domestic or international market. So now, sometimes for example, when the government wishes to have a private investment, okay, from other countries, so that becomes an overseas investment, and that is called as what? FDI, foreign direct investments or foreign portfolio investment. What is FDI? When another country is making investment in your country in few projects and all, when the ownership, management, control, sab kuch belongs to them. That is called as FDI in simple terms. What about FPI? It is foreign portfolio investment, where the individuals or entities will buy the stocks or shares or securities of one particular company. That is called as foreign portfolio investment or foreign institutional investors. I have taught you this before as well. FDI and FPI. They are very, very important. You can just go through the concepts once again. So now I repeat once again, FDI is nothing but what? An investment made by a foreign country. Sorry, investment made by an individual in one country, guys, to another country. Take care into the business interest or which they have in the so-called country that they want to do. Whereas in the context of foreign portfolio investment means the individuals will invest in what? The securities or stocks or shares or whatever it is. Clear? And which is quite popular. Your FDI is quite popular because as far as the country India is concerned, for the past 5 years or even for the 10 years also if you take, we are receiving a good amount of FDI without much of decrease as such. We are having a decent amount of FDI, guys, in various sectors. And as far as a very recent current affairs is concerned, in the 2021, I can tell you that India had a huge amount of foreign direct investments into your third sector of the economy, that is service sector or tertiary sector. In that, your software and IT, they were getting the huge number of benefit. Software and IT sector. Clear? All these are important current affairs points which you can note it. And there is something called as 100% FDI in the context of government. They can do via the automatic or the government route. That is all these things you'll be studying once again, so nothing to worry. So in simple term, this is what is called as your private investment model and this is what is called as FDI and also FPI. Clear? Now don't you think so private investment is a little bit beneficial because they can generate more efficiency. How? By creating more competition, healthy competition, by realization of economies of scale and having a greater flexibility than what is available to the so-called public sector. Clear? Now that this doesn't mean that you can give the investment or let's say you can completely hand over a project to the private alone, because for private sectors or private entities, what is your objective? Profit motive. For them, social service and security comes or social welfare comes secondary. But for government, social welfare comes first and then goes to profit these days, right? Previously, social welfare was only objective of government, but today, social welfare along with getting profits to sustain the project because they also need money, right? But for private, it is the ulta. So, chalo, the government decided let's have a new model, an amalgamation or a combination of all these models together called as a triple P model. So, this particular model called as triple P, it is an arrangement between whom, guys? The government and the private sector for the provision of public assets or public service. So, through the so-called triple P partnership, it will allow all the large-scale projects. Whose projects? Large-scale government projects. Let's say your roads, your railways, your bridges, your hospitals, exclusively to be completed with the funding that they get from the private sector. But at the end of the day, when the construction, or let's say the project is over, they have to hand over it to the public as well. There will be a contract arrangement between these two parties as such. Clear? So here in this kind of triple P or public-private partnership, the entire investments, it is undertaken by whom? By the private sector for one particular period of time. Let's say 5 years or 10 years. Once the work is done, it will be handed over to the government. Accordingly, they'll get a share basis as such. Clear? And such kind of partnership is quite good because it works very well when the private sector technology innovations, it has been applied for getting the work done in the prescribed time period. So within the prescribed budget time period, of course the work gets done because of efficiency. There is no sort of lag as such. So now the so-called triple P, it involves full retention of responsibility by the government for providing the services. It does not amount to privatization. So just because the private is doing doesn't mean that the government can charge for the services from the people. Let's say when a railway is constructed, a road is constructed, you can collect toll as per the requirement of private. No. The revenue that you collect from toll or let's say the kind of ticket fare that you give for railways, it will be in par with what the government rules and regulations which will benefit the citizen with regard to social welfare. Clear? Now, a quick look into the public-private partnership models, guys. You would have studied this in your comprehensive syllabus of economy under the heading called as investment models. Okay? There is something called as BOT. Not only BOT, BOT is called as built operate transfer. Then BOO called as BOO. Okay? That is built operation model and then BOOT. BOOT. So now apart from that you have BOLT, BOLT, BOLT model and also DBFO. So now actually out of all these four models, your BOT, built operate transfer model is very important because most of your current affairs and other perspectives are related to this particular topic. This is a very traditional or a conventional triple P model I can tell you, where the private partner, okay, whoever is undertaking the project under triple P through using this BOT model, they will be responsible to design, build and operate this particular project during the so-called period which has been given to them. And then once the job is done, if I am the private entity, I will have to transfer back the project or facility to the public sector. It belongs to them. Now, the finance, the money, sab kuch for carrying out this particular project given by the government under triple P model. Okay, using the BOT model under that, the finance has to be undertaken by the private sector. They should take the responsibility for constructing and then maintaining it. Later, that will be given back to the public sector. Now, the public sector government, what they will do under this particular model, they'll start allowing the private sector partner to collect revenue from the users. If you see a road, okay, the road construction now, National Highway Authority of India. Today, I can tell you that they come under this particular BOT model. The National Highway projects contracted out by our National Highway Authority of India under the BBB model. That's a major example of BOT. There is something called as HAM. What is HAM? Not your neighbor wala HAM, guys. It is hybrid annuity model. I repeat, hybrid annuity model. So using this model, you will be able to use what? You will be able to use the benefits of private sector, and then the job will be done with regard to construction of road, and then it will be handed over to the public. Take care. So the so-called model BOT and also HAM is exclusively a different topic of discussion. We'll be discussing in the coming classes. Take care. It requires a little of explanation because a lot of points come under that. Now, in general perspective as to what is BOT, we have analyzed. Clear? Then BO means here also same thing. One of the kind of public-private partnership model it is, where the ownership of the newly built facility or let's say the organization or let's say the project, that will rest with the private party. Even if the so-called construction is done, or let's say the so-called work is done, also it will remain the private party, and that will be on the mutually agreed terms and conditions with the government or public sector. Take care. Then your next model of public-private partnership is BOOT. Here, after the so-called negotiated period, let's say of 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years, the project will be transferred to the government or to the private operator. It depends upon who wants it. And this is basically used for big projects like your highways and ports and all. But as far as the country India is concerned, build, operate, transfer in the context of road development is very popular, and that is indeed appreciable as such. Clear? Now, what is BOL, guys? Here the government in such kind of model in PPP, if two public and private sectors coming together, means the government will give a concession to private entity. So they'll be able to build or design the so-called facility in a proper way, own it and lease the facility to the public sector. And then at the end of the lease period, let's say 10 years or 5 years, they'll transfer the ownership or facility back to the government. That is how in the BOLT model, the projects have been undertaken by the public and the private sector. Then DBFO is something where the entire responsibility, guys, be it the construction, the design, the finance, money and the operation, sab kuch lies with the private party till the period of concession. That so-called period, that is called as DBFO model. But basically we prefer the BOT model, build, operate, transfer. Under that only hybrid annuity model, then something called as EPC, engineering, procurement, construction model, a lot of things come in. All these things are kind of important topics to be covered, which we'll be doing in the next class. Okay? So I hope it is crystal clear for you people. Now before that, the benefits of PPP model, what are they? See, the government, the private, they are coming together for whom, guys? For we the citizens, right? So the government also should benefit, the private also should benefit, and also we the citizens, because the outcome is enjoyed by us. So now easy access to service, when things are done in a proper way, in a very good quality way, you have a very well connected roads, railways, and that on the proper time through the PPP model, then it is beneficial for we the people. Then single window, one-stop shop, 24/7 convenience for us, flexibility in the access method, and also saving of indirect cost and hardship. We are absolutely at an advantage, no doubt in that. What about government? Government is able to release the burden they have in the context of finance. They'll be able to minimize the financial outgo. Then there'll be better liquidity. They'll have a lot of protection against the technology obsolescence. Government may not have the so-called updated technology to do the constructions of the important projects because of lack of financial perspective, but private will be having that. So that is one relaxation for government. Now and then speedy implementation of projects and also efficiency in management. Private means they will continuously get a reliable stream of revenue from the government, and the risk is quite less for them because in the PPP model, the government bears the full responsibility and risk, not the private. Private is just an entity to work. That's all. They're using them as a medium. And now when private is coming, it is not necessary that the people who are employed in government should come and work here. Lot of people, let's say for example, the construction of roads will require a lot of laborers. So private means they can hire anybody. So a lot of job opportunities are created in the context of contract workers, casual workers, sab kuch like that. So at least for that short period of time, people are not going, without wages or income. They're getting some sort of employment. Clear? So these are the advantages for each of these categories, guys, using the PPP model. So I hope it is crystal clear. Now it's quick, it's high time that we are going to have a quick look into what are the recent developments with regard to triple P model. It will be quite interesting for you to know few facts as well here. So now healthcare. Even today, guys, health sector or healthcare in the context of triple P is very, very important. In this COVID-19 pandemic, chalo, that is indeed very important, I can tell you, right? Now, if you see in the year 2020, guys, as of November, around 1,100 triple P projects were launched in our country, India. And come on, the kind of investments are indeed huge. You can see the big number, the bada wala number over here. Don't you think so it's too huge? Yes. And let's have a look into what was the so-called triple P investments in the health sector. If you see, the independent think tank of our country of India, Niti Aayog, they came out with the public-private partnership model so that they'll be able to bring a lot of changes in the health sector. And as far as corona or let's say COVID-19 pandemic is concerned, the health sector requires a lot of development today. And even in the year 2020 also, the Niti Aayog brought in this. Now, as per the so-called triple P model developed by Niti Aayog for the health sector, they said that the gap in medical education, I repeat, the gap that you have in medical education, that will be addressed, and shortage of qualified doctors will be addressed. If you see, for every one rural area or rural village, for let's say 10,000 people, you may have only 1 or 2 doctors as such. The ratio is very pathetic. And you have a lot of quacks, Kallatranwala doctors also on the rise, guys, where they'll give the wrong medicines and kill the people also. That is also happening in many, many rural part of our country as such, right? So the qualified doctors, the shortage of that should be addressed, and they should be willing to work in the interior and remote part as well, in the primary healthcare centers or wherever, and render their services. And if you see the case of nurses, most of the nurses, guys, they just run or rush to the Middle East countries or let's say the foreign countries, because they get a better package and better opportunity there. Why can't a country, India, provide the same thing? So we'll be able to utilize those talent pools in our own country. Why would we leave them there? In this COVID-19 pandemic, we are able to understand the benefits, or let's say the importance of these two categories, doctors and nurses. Right? That is why the government is trying to increase the payment, wherein they'll be able to retain these people. A lot of people prefer working outside, which cannot be appreciated as such, right? Now, back to the investments in triple P in the context of health sector by Niti Aayog. The next important point is, as per this model, the existing or new private medical college, that will also be linked with what? The functional district hospital or government hospital, guys. That is also one way in which you can improve. Clear? Now, that's all. Talking about the railways, come on, do you know this, guys, Tejas Express? There has been a lot of public-private investments in railways. Have you heard about Tejas? The special train from Lucknow to New Delhi. You should have heard this. This is a train, guys, picture of train, and the beautiful, girls out there who are working as, who are working in this Tejas Express. They look like air hostess. Now you are thinking they're going in a flight. Don't even think they're going in a flight. They are rail hostess, I can tell you. Air hostess and rail hostess. So now, as far as railway is concerned, this Tejas Express, what is written here, what is shown here for you, they are the first private train for our country, India. Under the model triple P, public-private partnership, and the service in Tejas Express, they'll be provided absolutely by the private players. That is why you are having this rail hostess here. Clear? It will be absolutely in the context of your airways as such. The same treatment, the same hygiene, the same kind of facilities, sab kuch will be there. This doesn't mean that to travel in Tejas is quite costly. It is not that costly. The government has made sure that it is kind of affordable also. But not for everyone, at least to a decent number of population. Clear? All the services like your housekeeping, your catering, your ticketing, your for refunds, parcels, sab kuch will be taken care by the private sector. And thus the physical infrastructure of this first private railway of our country, India, under triple P model, guys, I can tell you that they will be the Indian Railways. Clear? The physical infrastructure for the Tejas Express will be Indian Railways, and they will include the coaches, the locomotives, the guards, local pilots, and also other perspectives. So this is indeed a very good thing, na? The first private railway in our country, India. Keeping this in mind only, guys, now the government is exclusively moving into what? Is moving on to more and more investments in the railway sector in the context of triple P. Clear? Now, before that, before the questions, two more important points are there. Like this, if you see in the power sector also. See, power is again a very important sector of our country. They come under the 8 core or key or heavy or basic industries, right? Now, the government of India was also planning to launch something called as Aditya. What is Aditya? Not your friend wala Aditya. What is the full form of Aditya? Atal Distribution Transformation Yojana. Atal Distribution Transformation Yojana. So now in the context of this so-called power sector also, the government wanted to actually launch the Aditya or Atal Distribution Transformation Yojana, and as per the scheme it is said that if the states will involve private sectors for this, then it will improve the efficiency of state distribution companies or DISCOMs who distribute electricity. Okay? Then the central government can also start providing some incentive to the state governments in that context. That is one such thing. And previously such kind of scheme did not exist, because if India needs to become, let's say for example, if India needs to become a $5 trillion economy, I repeat, if India wants to become a $5 trillion economy, like how the economic survey predicted, guys, then we need to have a very, very healthy power sector. So thinking about privatizing, or let's say thinking about moving this power sector to the triple P model is indeed important. Don't you think so? And most of the developed countries, guys, they have literally privatized the so-called private sector. So why can't India do? So thus the public-private partnership model, guys, in Delhi was introduced in the year 2002 and it has proven to be a very big success, I can tell you. Clear? If you see the Delhi Vidyut Board, I hope all these facts are known to you. Delhi Vidyut Board, okay? It was privatized by selling its major stake. That is, completely they didn't sell, but 51% they gave it to private. So that is one such initiative under the private sector in the context of triple P model. Okay? Similarly, there is a sector called as urban housing. We saw health, we saw railways, we saw power sector. The next important one is what? The next important one is urban housing. In urban housing also is very important, guys. The triple P concept that is on the rise, I can tell you. Through this particular public-private partnership in urban housing, I can tell you, the government fund housing exclusively in cities or urban areas. They'll be converted to what? They'll be converted into affordable renting housing complex. Yeah, ARHC, you would have heard it. ARHC, affordable rental housing complex. Clear? And this will be done. Why, guys? Because this will enable all the migrants who and they'll be able to, this will enable them to avail or get housing facilities at a concessional rate in the cities or urban areas. So they don't face any sort of difficulties, because people who migrate from rural to urban areas, when they come to urban areas, they get in the chalo. It is very difficult for them to survive. Because of high living cost, no employment, subcuts like that, they end up in urban slum. So you can prevent such kind of thing, because a person is said to be in poverty when he or she is deprived of what? The basic facilities, food, clothing, water, shelter. And shelter is even more important. So such kind of schemes can actually help them and prevent them from putting up into urban slums, especially the migrant people. Clear? So that's all for the day, my young officers. Here we have the important questions to be noted. The first one is, how does the triple P model work in a country, India? Now, this is a very, very, very important topic in the context of airways, because in airways or let's say in your airports, the triple P model was initially implemented, right? So keeping that in mind, only in the year 2011 this question was asked. Again, two questions were asked, guys, in the year 2011 from the mains examination from this topic. Triple P not only aid or help in sharing burden, but also tend to be more qualitative. Critically analyze the PPP development model. So now the keyword critically is coming. So apply the technique called as KIA, keyword interlinking approach, what I've taught you. Critically analyze means you should talk about the PPP model, then the current affairs perspective of it, the advantage and disadvantage. That is, what is the issues and what are the benefits you get. Now, since you've spoken about the issues or challenges of this PPP model for our country, India, from there if you develop the way forward or suggestion points. Not like 10 points, guys, hardly 4 or 5 points from what you wrote, and then conclude in a holistic way, in a balanced way, saying that it is indeed the need of the hour. So whatever disadvantage or let's say issues they have, we can rectify it. Okay, this is what you should do. This is very, very important. Please practice this question. It's an important topic of discussion. And for the prelims also, you may get questions in the context of HAM, Hybrid Anti-Model, then Engineering Procurement Committee, in all these things, the National Highway Authority of India, then in the context of BOT, Build, Operate, Transfer, then collection of toll revenue. We have done a lot of questions as well in the MCQs in the free classes. The same keyword topics you can just go through. Take care. So thank you so much, my young officers. I hope you enjoyed this session. If so, don't forget to like this video, share it, and also put your valuable feedbacks in the comment box. So I'll see you tomorrow with another set of amazing topics on this fundamentals of economy. So before that, a quick reminder to you people regarding the schedule of my class. 6 to 7 p.m. free class on Unacademy. Top 1000 MCQ, the code is nisha.najmuddin. Below the description, you have the link of the plus classes and batches in Unacademy Compact. Without fail, try to enroll for it. Clear? And if you see, there is another benefit, guys. On 9th of June, a lot of batches are coming. 1 year and 2 year batches of lot of educators, Hindi, English as well as bilingual. Don't miss it. And also, if you see, you will be able to get another extra discount. That is, a combo prices are revealed, wherein GS plus option together, if you take a offer, you are getting 35% discount. You can see for 1 year it is only 57,000 you need to pay up. It was 77 previously. Now in this 57 again minus extra 10%. For that, use the code Nisha IAS Live. Nisha IAS Live is the new code you can use, guys, to get an extra 10% discount. Keep this in mind. Okay? And also, if you subscribe for 1 year, till the next prelims, it will be extended. That is May 2020. If you subscribe, till May 2022, you will have. But the new offer is till the next year prelims, it will be extended, guys, your subscription. That is the advantage. So again, use the code Nisha IAS Live to get it. Clear? So any doubts, queries, whatever you have, feel free to get in touch with me via the Telegram. Okay? Nisha Najmuddin at Unacademy for UPSC, even for the notes as such. So chalo. Thank you so much. So let's crack it, guys. Your UPSC CSC. So see you all. Stay safe and Jai Hind.